8 experienced cave divers entered the Sac Actun Cenote on October 17, 1990, with the goal of exploring this incredible cave network. However, they encountered a horrible scenario and fought to escape. Are you enjoying our tales about cave diving but haven't subscribed yet? Please think about following our channel. The Sac Actun system, which the Mayans also called White Cave, is located 15 kilometers from Tulum, the longest subterranean cave system in Mexico and the second longest in the entire globe is this one. This aquatic system stands out due to the over 248 cenotes that are buried within it. This extensive cave system is made up of cenotes, which are sinkholes used as the cave's entrance. Among others, the Sac Actun and Cenote dos Ojos are located here. Animal fossils are abundant in the Sac Actun, demonstrating the well-preserved history that has been here for many centuries. The cave acquired the moniker Pet Cemetery as a result. The public has access to the cenotes of the Sac Actun, where they can savor the glistening waters and take in the splendor of nature. Numerous visitors to the Sac Actun cenote have gone diving, snorkeling, or swimming as appropriate. Divers have already investigated and explored nearly 215 miles of the cave systems, where they have found preserved ages worth of ancient relics. Giant sloths, clay pots, jewelry, mammoths, and other extinct species are among the archaeological artifacts found here. A group of 8 divers arrived at the parking area 4 miles north of Tulum, Yucatan, Mexico, about 10:30 a.m. on October 17, 1990. The Sac Actun Cenote was the destination on the 5th day of a 6-day tour that these experienced cave divers had planned for group diving. A detailed diagram of the cave system that will direct their exploration and the diving strategy were both decided upon. Entering the Sac Actun Cenote, exploring the cave, and leaving by the Grand Cenote had been the plan. The trek would take 22 minutes and reach the sea at a depth of 40 feet. They also had to cross a brief 21-meter gap line marked with a pink direction line sign at the start, which was around 85 meters upstream from Sac Actun. This was done so that it could be connected to the long line that runs downstream to the Grand Cenote. The temporary line would be installed by the lead divers, who had now been split into 2 teams of 4 divers each. The second crew reeled in the makeshift line as the first party reversed their route to Sac Actun. They would assemble at Sac Actun, dive via a different tunnel, and emerge at a third cenote via a formation room and a loop in the channel. Despite only lasting 24 minutes, the first leg went smoothly. To guide them down to the cave's tunnel, a second line was installed and extended into the Grand Cenote's expansive cavern zone. They all took a 15-minute break at the water's surface after reaching it, using that time to review their dive strategy twice. They also went ahead with a drawing on a dive slate meant to serve as a reminder for everyone in the cave structure because they knew anyone may forget. Third-party analysis of the approach was conducted since one of the team members was having trouble understanding the entire plan. This time, everyone concurred that they were free, so they returned to the cave system after descending. When they discovered a crocodile skeleton in one of the underground zones, they initially ran into a setback in their strategy. After that, a second delay occurred when a first team member dropped his mask and was saved by a second team member. The second group dove right behind them by about 100 feet, reeling in the cavern zone line. They regrouped and continued into the collapse zone. The pink direction line marking we previously mentioned, or 70 feet, is where the first team leader let go of the reel. He was also moving the other 3 members of his team forward. Shortly later, the second team arrived. The second team's second 3 members started swimming across the entire chasm while the 4th member was given the reel and instructed to reel it in. The first team leader then jumped forward to reunite with his team. At the other end of the 21-meter gap, he first rejoined his squad before taking the necessary rapid left turn and arriving at Sac Actun. When he turned to look, he saw one of the second team's members following, while the others had already reached the pink marker. They began to approach Sac Actun, but were unable to observe any following lights. They assumed that the second team's inability to be seen was the result of a jammed reel. They thought that they could quickly resolve that as a group and depart. They carried out the plan put forward by their group and moved on to the third part of the exploration. They found their way to the third cenote via navigating. The first team's captain, however, was worried about the second group and inquired of the other divers as to when they had last seen them while on the dive. After lengthy deliberation, they all came to the conclusion that the prior occurrence occurred at the pink marker. The first team leader then instructed the other 3 to stay put before leaving to look for the second team. He continued to the pink marker because the second team wasn't at the Sac Actun. The gap line reel had been switched at the pink spot, he realized after he arrived. He next made the decision to visit the Grand Cenote, but it was also deserted. The gang then returned to Sac Actun after he returned to the third cenote and located them. Then for a second search, he entered by himself in the direction of Grand Cenote. The second team ran into several issues in the interim. When the leader returned, the reel diver on the second team had about 1/3 of the line reeled in, and he requested that he replace it. They then swam back to the pink point when the leader made a right turn and descended further into the cave network. The other divers, including the team member who was introduced after the first team, followed their leader without question. The leader checked his air supply and took a quick break before starting the descent. The leader stopped and asked his teammates using his slate why they hadn't seen the first team after diving about 1,000 feet in this turn they took. They made the decision to go back then. They quickly became aware of a snap and gap line to the right. They continued on it, thinking it would take them to the third cenote, but after 100 feet, they noticed a line arrow pointing away from them. Then they turned around and continued applying the fundamental principles. One diver's fin strap came off during this time, prompting a lengthy delay as his teammates helped him. Despite being the new adjustable type, the fins had been properly fixed. They eventually became concerned because it had been a while since they had seen a direction arrow. This was strange. Now that they were swimming quickly, the two in the back passed their teammates. They moved so quickly that they kicked up some silt and disappeared from view. The two who were currently in the rear started sharing air after one of them rushed out. They were around 600 feet distant from Sac Actun at this time. They gave up since swimming became more difficult as the fin strap kept falling off. They also dropped a camera, then swam for another 200 feet. The first team's leader saw 3 lights coming at him as he was traveling to Grand Cenote. As he swam approached the first 2 of the 3 lights, he observed that they were exchanging air. These 2 were sending out band signals, which indicates that serious disaster is brewing behind them. The first team's leader entered the cave underwater and discovered a body hanging from an airspace in the roof. It was way too buoyant for him to draw to give it air. He cleared the air from his regulator, letting it flow into his pocket. The diver was gasping for oxygen as he placed his palm within the air pocket and touched it. It was still warm. When he realized this, he placed his long hose second stage regulator into the air pocket, at which point the diver grabbed it. After about a minute of breathing, the diver left the air pocket. The first team leader took the victim's face mask off and put it in his right hand while using his left. The sufferer cleared it and put on the mask. The victim was then led 150 feet to the water's surface by the first team leader, who took his right hand. The air that the 2 second team divers used to breathe together allowed them to reach the surface just before it ran out. The other 3 members of the initial team had already returned to the surface in the interim. The second squad was missing one more member who had yet to surface. The first team leader and another member of the first team then returned to the cave to look for the final team member. The last member was later located 20 feet away from the location of the first victim, who got out alive. He was discovered lying on his back on the floor, his regulator hanging out of his mouth. In an effort to save the victim's life, the first team leader and the other diver promptly put one of the regulators into his mouth. Unfortunately, they got no response. They hauled the victim out of the Sac Actun cenote while tightly gripping the body. The sufferer received mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for 5 minutes, but it was unsuccessful. He had passed away. He had passed away in the Sac Actun cenote's water. Each diver had a complete cave certification. The second team captain or another member of the second team or both might have been the deceased victim. He reportedly completed 53 dives in caves. There was one constant during the entire dive. Disorientation was the only factor that appears to have contributed to this disaster, which was most likely brought by being unfamiliar with the cave. A minor error or loss of orientation while cave diving might lead to life-threatening circumstances. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you like what you saw, click the bell icon, like, and subscribe buttons to be notified when we post another thrilling cave diving story.